Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are making a little treat box. This could be used for Galentines Day or for classroom gifts. It could be used for coworkers. It's just a really small, very easy to put together little treat box. So normally I would use my scoreboard, but for today's video, it actually works pretty well on my paper trimmer. So I'm going to use that today. I'm going to use a stylus and the narrower end because that fits in the groove of my trimmer better. I'm going to use some cardstock. This is like 65-pound cardstock. This is from Paper Studio. It's in a variety of colors. It measures 3 by 6, and I just picked some colors that I thought were very Valentine's-y. That was my daughter doodling on it. That can be the inside. Nobody will ever see it, and let's be real, like these kids are going to rip these open, so you're never going to know. This is the Simon Says Stamp Ornament, Ornamental Love, something like that. I'll put it in the link below. I'm going to use the heart, this like medium-sized heart, and then the U word in scripty font. I have bubblegum and tidepool Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated Ink. I have some scrap white cardstock, and we are going to go ahead and do some stamping. I'm also grabbing my hole punch. This is from We Are Memory Keepers, but any hole punch will work. This just happens to be the one I'm using today. So I took that medium heart that is kind of like leaves. It's made out of leaves. And I'm going to stamp this heart. I have 30 pieces of paper here. I'm making 30 of these. And so I'm going to just repeatedly stamp out this heart. I'm going to do it in the bubblegum ink, and I'm going to do it in the tidepool ink. And then in order to stamp the U, I'm going to stamp the U inside of that heart, but I'm going to stamp it in the opposite ink. So if I used the bubblegum ink to stamp the heart, I'm going to use the tidepool ink to stamp the U, and vice versa. If I use the tidepool for the heart, I'm going to use bubblegum for the U. I'm going to stamp all of these out, and then we will move on to the next step. How I did the next step is I actually cut these out with my brother Scan and Cut. It had no problem picking up this tidepool ink, but it for some reason could not find the bubblegum ink to cut it out properly. It kept missing things. It just was not going to work. So I ended up having to cut out the bubblegum one by hand, but for the most part I was able to cut out all of these tidepool ones using my brother Scan and Cut. I even tried to like cut it out in black and white or have it scan it in black and white. Nothing was working. So I just kind of decided to cut my losses and move on. So here is what I was talking about with the stamping of the U. If I use the tidepool ink, I was going to use the bubblegum to stamp the sentiment. Now these are going to serve a dual purpose on the little treat holder. These are not only going to be an embellishment, but they are also going to essentially be the sentiment. So it's going to be like heart you or love you. How I stamped these out, I did them very assembly line style, and I would just lay out a whole bunch of the hearts at one time and then go through and stamp the U in the middle of them. That was really quick and easy, and was a fast way to get these done very efficiently. Moving on to the actual treat holder itself. So we have the sentiment and the embellishment for it done. So like I said, these papers measure 3 by 6, and I'm just demonstrating here how this is all going to come together so you can kind of see where we're headed. So you can do one of two things. You can either fold this paper in half long ways on the 6-inch side at 3. You can fold it in half on the 6-inch side, which would make that fold at 3. Or you can put it in a paper trimmer and score it at 3, or on a scoreboard and score it at 3. It was just easy for me just to go ahead and fold it in half. I am not the most accurate, not the most accurate when it comes to cutting down paper, and so it was just better for me if I went ahead and folded it in half. So because this is at 3 inches, across the top, so the narrow side is 3 inches, I'm going to take my paper and I'm going to line it up at the 1.5 inch mark. And in the groove of my trimmer, I'm going to take the narrow end of that little stylus there, and I'm just going to make a little notch. You can use a pin, or you can use your end of your stylus. It's not going to be seen, so whatever you choose to use is fine. This is going to end up folding up and being the inside of this little treat holder, so it's not going to be visible. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that little notch that we made, hit the 1.5 mark, and then I'm going to connect that within the line of that trimmer, the groove of that trimmer. I'm going to use that 3 inch mark, and I'm going to connect those two. So I start at the 1.5 at the top of the 3, and then I'm going to score down to that fold that we made at 1/2 or 3 inches in this case. How I like to do it, so I'm not like chasing my paper around, is I usually stick my finger in the top of it, so at that little tick mark we made, and then I can swivel the other half around. So that just kind of shows you, we made a tick mark from the 1.5 down to the 3 on one side, 1.5 down to the 3, and just connect them. You're going to do that on all 4 sides to every piece of paper you have. It's not hard, and it's really not that time consuming either. It just takes some, it's harder to talk about than to actually do it. So I'm going to do that again here. This is the other side, 1.5 down to the 3 inch fold. So you should end up with like essentially a triangle, or a diamond, excuse me, in the middle of your paper. I'm just going to take my fingers. You don't have to score this with a bone folder or burnish with a bone folder, but you can if you choose to. But because this paper is so thin, just using your fingertips is just fine. But I guess I did go through and burnish with my bone folder. So that is how the basic construction of this little treat holder comes together. So the next part is actually putting in the holes for the string or the ribbon to tie this together to keep it closed. Because once you put the string in there, it does keep itself closed. You don't need glue, you don't need tape of any kind, any adhesive of any kind. It'll just keep itself closed. So what I've done is I have tucked in 2 of the sides. I folded it together, and if I had the one in my right hand tucking in on one, I made sure that it tucked in on the top and the bottom. So what I'm trying to say is you don't want it to where like one of the flaps in your left hand is not tucked in and is sticking out on the outside on one side, but it's not sticking out on the other side, on your right hand. You want to make sure that you have the top and the bottom flap on both sides hanging out on the same hand. Again, it's more complicated to talk about than to actually see me do. So once you have that all folded together, then take your hole punch and punch a little hole when those 2 sides are folded together. So as you can see here, I'm just making sure that the one in my left hand, both of those are tucked into the ones on the right hand side, on my right hand side. And then you're going to take a piece of ribbon or string. I made these holes kind of narrow. So if you wanted to use ribbon, I would perhaps use a bigger hole punch. So all you're going to do is thread this through one side, and then make sure that you have the same flap tucked in on this other side, and just weave that through on this other side also. And then you can tie a knot, like a top knot. You can tie a bow. Whatever you choose to do is absolutely fine and will be super cute. Again, I realize that this is going to be given to like kids, so they're not going to care if it's cute or not. They're not going to care if it's in a bow versus a top knot little knot thing. They're not going to care. It's at this point that you would want to put your treats in. And once I pull this string tight, you'll see that it keeps itself closed. So this is something really nice if you don't have a lot of glue. You don't want to fiddle with glue. This is a good option. For demonstration purposes for this video, I did choose to just tie this in a quick knot, a quick bow. But once I'm tying 30 of them, I probably will forgo the bow and just tie it in a little knot up at the top. So that is the little box complete. And now we will just do our embellishment slash sentiment. And all I'm going to do for that is the sides where you see the little flaps, the kind of open, I'm going to count that as the back of this little treat holder. So the sides where they're more flush and it's a tight edge, I guess is the correct way to refer to that, or a burnished edge, not a loose edge. That is the side that I'm going to attach this little heart embellishment. So I chose to have my heart kind of hang off to the side. I thought that was kind of cute. So I'm just going to apply some liquid adhesive, or you can use whatever you choose, to the left-hand side of this heart, and then I'm going to have it to where it sticks off the right-hand side of this little treat holder. And that is all. So this took way longer to explain than to do. You can leave it at this, or you can add further embellishments, but that is all. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.